Dear honorable speakers, friends, so ANS Network, together with the Anti-Corruption Action Center, are honored to organize online international event which will consist of 2 panels. A higher-level discussion, Ukraine-NATO Vision 2030, and expert debates, way forward with the state security service reform. 2021 sees Ukraine's 30th anniversary of its renewed independence, as well as the change of presidency in the US. Renaissance of transatlantic relations is needed to respond to today's and tomorrow's security challenges, which requires strengthening NATO as a powerful military, political and global alliance. Ukraine's involvement into the discussion on strengthening the political dimension of the alliance, the NATO 2030 concept, is a clear signal of allies' unwavering political and practical support of the Ukrainian state. Ukraine expects that revised NATO strategy concept for the nearest 10 years would reconfirm alliance commitment to the open door policy and help allies to find a way to implement the decision of the 2008 Bucharest summit. It's also an opportune moment to reassess the strategic importance of Ukraine in the post-Soviet space, but also in a global geopolitical context. What is the West's geopolitical ambition for the next decade for the whole European continent? How Ukraine's successful transformation could become a powerful contribution to the global democracy agenda aiming at changing Russian Federation. So today, during our first panel, our distinguished speakers will cover the following important issues: 30 years of Ukraine's renewed independence and NATO, the role of Ukraine in EuroAtlantic security from Soviet Union collapsed to Putin's hybrid warfare. What is next after the EOP? What could be the map perspective accelerate the process of security and defense reform? And what areas need to be focused on to improve interoperability and embed reform on practical level? So I think that we today have really privilege to have with us such honorable speakers, and let me start our discussion with a big friend of Ukraine, the president of NATO PA, Mr. Gerry Connolly. And Mr. Connolly, let us express our gratitude for all your efforts, for your strong support, and also your resolutions on non-recognition, the Crimea annexation and Russian occupation policy. And also, I think, starting from you, we also would like to congratulate the American people with your new president, your new administration, and also quoting your president that America is back and diplomacy is back at the center of your foreign policy. I think it's really very important to make the alliance stronger, and within next decade also to see the new members of the alliance. And so, Mr. Connolly, we know also that you represent also a Georgian caucus in the Congress, and we here in Ukraine do believe that having a unique situation, Joe Biden as a 46th president of the United States and Mr. Connolly as the president of NATO PA, Ukraine and Georgia have an historical chance to receive membership action plan during next years. So, Mr. Connolly, the floor is yours. What is your vision for next decade? And also thanks for your statement yesterday during the Ukraine-NATO Interparliamentary Council, and also thanks for your very proactive position in defending truth, democracy in the world, and also supporting Ukraine's transformation in successful country with strong institutions and rule of law. So please, how is your vision of Ukraine-NATO 2030, and what is next after the EOP?
I want to thank everybody for being here today for a very timely discussion And I also want to thank our former NATO Parliamentary Assembly President, Rasa, for joining us today. It's great to see you again as well. Thank you for your wonderful service to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. I'm also grateful to Hanna, Hopko, and Oksana Yurynets for giving the NATO Parliamentary Assembly such a prominent role in this conference. You were both powerful voices in our assembly on behalf of Ukraine, and it's great to see you both again. You can rest assured that under Yegor's able leadership, Ukraine continues to be represented effectively in our assembly and its deliberations. It's of course a pleasure to see Rasa, who among the many distinctions as former president of our assembly, and last but not least, you've got Philippe, the deputy head of the French delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, a true friend of Ukraine. Good to see you, Philippe, as well. 2021 is an important year for Ukraine as you celebrate 30 years since Ukraine regained its independence. This anniversary reminds us of the many hard struggles Ukraine went through under the Soviet Union's repressive regime and its people's hard-fought battles to regain independence and set the country on a new and democratic path. Independent Ukraine is paying a high price for the choices it has made, and all of us must stand firmly by your side to defend your freedom, to choose your future. 2021 is also a pivotal moment for NATO. Later this year, NATO's heads of state and government will meet to chart the path for NATO's adaptation through 2030, and hopefully agree to revise NATO's strategic concept. The list of challenges we face is long. First among these is Russia. During the meeting of our Ukraine-NATO Interparliamentary Council yesterday, we reaffirmed our support firmly for NATO's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. We made very clear we will never accept Russia's forcible and illegal annexation of Crimea, and we will continue to condemn its active destabilization of eastern Ukraine, the daily violations of the ceasefire, and the ongoing human rights violations in illegally occupied territories. In fact, just yesterday, in the Congress of the United States, I reintroduced the Crimea Annexation Non-Recognition Act, which prohibits U.S. agencies from taking any action that recognizes Russian sovereignty or could be construed as recognizing Russian sovereignty in Crimea. That bill passed the House of Representatives in the last Congress by a vote of 427 to 1. It has enormous, broad, bipartisan support. And that bill is now routinely included in our annual appropriations and defense authorization bills. We will not recognize the forceful and illegal seizure of territory in the 21st century. This is a position that's deeply rooted in American foreign policy through a 100-year policy known as the Stimson Doctrine. As Rasa knows well, it was previously applied through the Wells Declaration with respect to the Soviet occupation of the Baltics throughout the Cold War. The United States stood firm on what was at times viewed as a maybe quixotic policy by non-recognition of the Soviet annexation of the Baltic republics. But now, the Baltic states stand shoulder to shoulder with us in this alliance as free and independent and sovereign states. We must also continue to stand up to Russia's other violations, provocations, and interference, while seeking dialogue and cooperation where we can. We must condemn President Putin's ruthless repression against his own people and the politically motivated persecution against his opponents, Mr. Navalny being only the latest example. At the same time, we must urgently start developing a shared approach to China, as our Assembly has called for. We must continue to combat terrorism, address instability in our southern neighborhood, deal with the climate crisis, and revive the global arms control agenda and infrastructure. These threats we face together require us to adapt militarily, I know Ukraine has made much progress in this regard. I want to pay tribute in particular to Ukraine's remarkable contribution to NATO missions and operations, and salute all the men and women of the Ukrainian armed forces for their exceptional service. But we must also adapt politically. NATO is an alliance underpinned by common values, democratic values, which have been pivotal in maintaining the alliance cohesion for 7 decades. It's a testament to the triumph of liberal democracy that Ukraine and other countries continue to want to join the alliance along those terms. These values are the strongest weapon we possess to effectively counter Vladimir Putin or President Xi's authoritarianism. That's why, as part of the NATO 2030 reflection process, I proposed the establishment of a coordination center for democratic resilience within NATO at its headquarters, which would help NATO countries and aspirant countries strengthen their democratic institutions, promote election integrity, and combat subversive activities by foreign governments. As events in my own country on January 6th with the storming of the United States Capitol certainly show, democracy is resilient, but it's also fragile. And there are threats from within as well as without. I was glad to see the idea endorsed by the group of experts tasked by the Secretary General of NATO with producing a slate of recommendations on how NATO can strengthen itself politically in the coming decade. But events at the beginning of this year show, as I said, that democracy is fragile. We've got to constantly work to protect it, expand it, strengthen our ability to resist and counter attempts from within as well as without that might seek to undermine it. This is why further reforms in Ukraine remain vitally important. Ukraine must make continued progress fighting corruption, strengthening the rule of law, democratic control of security services, and reforming the economy. Obviously, this must be done for Ukraine's and the population's prosperity, but also because it's in the best defense against Russia's interference and your best response to Russia's authoritarianism. Democratic consolidation is what will pave the way for further Euro-Atlantic integration. Our new administration in the United States is committed to rebuilding our alliances, starting with NATO and restoring the United States' standing in the world. As you know, President Biden knows Ukraine very well. As President Obama's vice president, he was responsive and responsible for U.S. policy on Ukraine. And as president, I expect him to reinforce support for Ukraine on a bipartisan basis. In his first week as Secretary of State, the Honorable Anthony Blinken spoke with Kuleba, expressing U.S. support and pledging continued robustness. As you may know, the United States Congress have been a firm supporter of Ukraine's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and Euro-Atlantic aspirations, and have been a firm opponent of Russia's actions in Ukraine. Today, all of us come together because we believe in Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic path to democratic consolidation and reform. 2 years ago, almost to the day, the Ukrainian Parliament decided to enshrine Ukraine's ambition to join NATO and the EU in its constitution, thereby providing a clear goal and perspective for the Ukrainian people. I hope that soon Ukraine will be on the threshold of NATO membership. To do so, it's essential that all of us continue to play our part in the great transformation which Ukraine is undergoing. In turn, you can count on our continued support, our counsel, and our assistance. Thank you again for having me, and I wish all of you a very fruitful conference. God bless.
God bless America, God bless Ukraine and European continent. Mr. Connolly, thank you so much for your statement. We express our gratitude for all your efforts, your strong position within years from the beginning of Russian military invasion and military aggression against Ukraine, you submitted resolutions on territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. So many thanks for your efforts. And also, as I mentioned before, and I hope now you can hear me in English and you see the channel with English translation. So we do believe that having a unique situation, Joe Biden as the 46th president of the United States, and you, Mr. Connolly, as the president of NATO PA, Ukraine and Georgia have an historical chance to receive membership action plan during next years. And also, Mr. Connolly, what is the possibilities that you with your colleagues could submit a bipartisan resolution for NATO enlargement for Ukraine and Georgia and initiate committees hearing on this issue? And also, it's important that we would be happy to see a special coordinator for NATO enlargement for Ukraine and Georgia within Biden administration, as Ambassador Daniel Fried, who crafted the policy of NATO enlargement to Central European nations, advancing the goal of Europe free and at peace. So, Mr. Connolly, thanks for being a champion supporting Ukraine's democratic transformation, and also thanks for your statement yesterday at Ukraine-NATO Interparliamentary Council. And now we are giving the floor to Rasa Jukneviciene, our good friend, former Minister of Defense of Lithuania, and also President of Parliamentary NATO Parliamentary Assembly in 2018. So, Rasa, what is the strategy of NATO within next decade? How to counter Russian hybrid warfare, Chinese also attacks, and we are here in Ukraine doing our best to receive membership action plan, because you know in the constitution we incorporated our strategic goal to become members of NATO and the EU. So please, how do you see next decade with the optimism? And I hope Ukraine and Georgia will join to NATO within the next 10 years. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Hanna. Thank you all. Very nice to see many good friends. Despite the situation that we can meet each other on Zoom platform, but I think it's also something new and very useful for all of us to do that. In a few minutes, I will leave for the debates in plenary, European Parliament plenary, on Borrell visit to Moscow. So I have a very important day exactly now, and but of course, my pleasure to give some of my thoughts on the topic you decided to discuss. I also will start mentioning 2 years ago about the principle of EuroAtlantic integration was introduced into Constitution of Ukraine. It was really a very important step forward, and I am sure that in my lifetime I will celebrate your membership in NATO. Today is the right time to speak about the status of transatlantic relations as such, and not only about Ukraine, because it is important for countries like Georgia, like Ukraine, and the whole region. Contemporary US-EU relations are based on the history of the end of World War II. NATO is practical expression of North American, European post-war relations. And it is more than obvious that NATO is the most successful political defense alliance in history. When considering current relations and future goals, we must not forget why NATO was formed in 1949 and later the EU under that umbrella, in order to prevent the expansion of the Stalinist USSR further to the West. Today, when we look to Russia and current situation, we are in a bit similar situation, unfortunately. after a few decades of dreaming about Europe from Lisbon to Vladivostok, we need to rethink our relationship with the aggressive Kremlin regime that worships Stalin and poisons people with using chemical weapons. The transatlantic connection must ensure that aggression is contained. We need containment again, containment of Putin regime. Logic says that after Borrell's visit to Moscow last week, there should be no more dreams that Putin will change, and that Europe from Lisbon to Vladivostok is possible with this regime. In this sense, Borrell's visit was a success. I hope it's end of dreams, not realistic dreams. The situation is only getting worse and will get worse in that country. That is why a strong common transatlantic policy is needed today more than ever, like it was in 1949. I will not focus only on Russian factor in this policy. The search for a more coordinated policy towards China and other emerging security issues are also relevant here. There is one of the most important criteria and vector that must unite EU, US, strategy, tactics and actions, the protection, development and consolidation of democracy on the European continent, including Ukraine, of course. In this sense, I also imagine Europe from Lisbon to Vladivostok. It must be a democratic space without Lukashenko and Putin. Democracy is a key word when we speak about transatlantic bond. This is the only way to understand the common long-term goals of transatlantic relations. The future of Ukraine is one of the most important cornerstones here, because without Ukraine, Putin, the Kremlin cannot build its own empire. Today we see that Belarus is no longer a guaranteed member of the Kremlin alliance. Therefore, in order to have peace in Europe, we must support the nations that are striving for democracy and freedom, because democracies never are at war. Antony Blinken's idea of map is important to Georgia, but not only for Georgia. This would pave the way and unblock de facto existing Kremlin factor for NATO's further enlargement in Europe. Ukraine itself should have more faith in the possibility of its EuroAtlantic integration, more believe, including your government and political elite, in the opportunity to follow the path of European integration more vigorously. Ukraine has many friends in the European Parliament, and although Russia and Belarus are at the top of the debates today, however, it is part of Ukraine's agenda as well. It's very important for Ukraine as well, because the Belarusians are also fighting for the freedom of the Ukrainians. The Russian people are watching, seeing, and also trying to rise from the terrible destruction. Today, by the way, we all together need to help the Russian people, because they are ruled by Putin, the world's greatest Russophobe, because he is afraid of Russian people, not we. Ukrainians' role is crucial here. Putin fears this role no less than the voice of his own nation. I will stop here saying Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava, thank you so much, Rasa, for being a champion within the European Parliament and also on behalf of Lithuania, supporting Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova. And it's true that in Eastern Partnership, Ukraine is a trendsetter, agenda setter of transformation, which is really important also for Russian society, because the successful Ukraine is a nightmare for Mr. Putin, but a good example for Russian citizens, for people in Belarus fighting for freedom, dignity, and democracy. So thanks for being with us all these years, supporting our reforms, and also please pass our best greetings to your colleagues from European Parliament. And during this weekend, our delegation on behalf with our Prime Minister is in Brussels. So we are moving towards our strategic goal to reach membership perspective in NATO and the EU. So thank you for your support, Rasa. And also, as I told to Mr. Connolly, current president of NATO PA, that it would be important also to see on behalf of the new presidential administration of the US, a special coordinator for NATO enlargement for Ukraine and Georgia, as Ambassador Daniel Fried used to be, and he crafted the policy of NATO enlargement for Central European nations like Poland, Hungary. So I think the more we have ambition plan for Ukraine and Georgia, this is our response on Russian hybrid warfare. And as you know, that at the end of January, Ukrainian Parliament adopted in the first reading very important draft on state security service reform. And now I would like to give a floor to Yegor Chernev, who is the head of Ukrainian delegation to Parliamentary Assembly of NATO, and ask Yegor a question. Yegor, what is next after enhanced EOP? And do you think, is there a political will in the parliament to adopt not just one state security service reform, but the comprehensive package needed to meet the criteria and to, together with Georgia, to receive membership action plan during the NATO summit?
Well, thank you for your invitation to this really important, I think, discussion for our further future. I think further future. Well, first of all, thank you for your time and for your attention and your support. I know that you're a great supporter of Ukraine in NATO. I remember your disturbing remark to some of presentation when the picture was the Crimea as with a border of Russia Federation, and you said that no, it's not true. It's Ukrainian territory, and so thank you for your support. Yeah, well, actually, we want to discuss several questions about several issues about Ukrainian path to NATO. Because, well, first of all, we have the we have the war with Russia Federation and ongoing aggression from this country. Unfortunately, more of that, we see that Russia Federation tried to enhance their power in the Black Sea region, and we have to react on this. Not only Ukraine, but the NATO, and I think it should be the common actions, common decision, and maybe some new platform with the cooperation with NATO. Also, we have to renew our relationship with on the NATO-Ukraine Commission at high level, because it's factually it's blocked right now, and we can't move forward. And maybe the most important thing is actually receiving of the MEP, Membership Action Plan for Ukraine, and I think we have right now the window of opportunity because of the new geopolitical situation in the world, because of new administration in the USA, because of strong support of the EU, Canada, Great Britain, of us, I think, and we clearly understand that receiving the membership map of Ukraine, it's not only about our homework. We do this homework. I definitely think that we will adopt all the needed laws about security service, about intelligence service, about well, we already adopted about intelligence service, about state secret. But we clearly understand that it's not enough, because actually MAP is a political decision. First of all, political decision which should be adopted by the parliaments of the allies. And in this way, we have to have support, strong support from, I hope, from Gerry Connolly, who was here in this discussion before, from Rasa, from all our partners all over the world. We understand that we have to organize bilateral, and we will organize bilateral communication and relations with all the members of NATO to understand what exactly we have to do from our side to achieve our map. We also understand that some countries have their own interests with collaboration with Russian Federation. It's pity that we see business as usual after the Russian Federation aggression since 2014. But we understand that it's economical interest, it's some social interest, internal interest of these countries, and we have to find this solution, what we can propose these countries from the Ukrainian side to have their support when the decision of the map will be on the table. And I hope, Philippe, for your support. I know that we have your support, always have your support. Maybe I can rely on your support in some bilateral communication with other countries, because I know that not all allies want to see in the further future Ukraine as a member of the NATO. So I hope for our fruitful collaboration in the nearest future. Thank you.
Thank you, Yegor. Thank you, Mr. Connolly, as the President of NATO Parliamentary Assembly, Rasa, Jukneviciene, for their wonderful statements. And of course, today during our Ukraine-NATO Vision 2030 discussion, and this is why we invited representatives of national parliaments from US Congress, from France, also from with the experience of Lithuanian Seimas. And now the floor is yours, Mr. Philippe. Je ne parle pas français, so I could not translate into your speech in French. So sorry. But please, if you could speak in English, we will be very thankful for you, and also let us gratitude you for visiting Ukraine, Kyiv, Lviv, and all your efforts, because because one of the topics that today we are discussing is the West's geopolitical ambition for the next decade for the whole European continent. And of course, what is the role of Ukraine as a trendsetter? And Rasa already mentioned hybrid threat to democracy, disinformation situation in Belarus, in Russian Federation with imprisonment of Navalny. So I think that successful Ukraine is crucially important for the transformation of the whole post-Soviet space. So please, how do you see the next decade, Ukraine and NATO? And of course, after the pandemic, we do believe that the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, which had to be in 2020, finally will be conducted next year in Kyiv. So this will be a unique opportunity to see more than 600 participants, higher level, discussing how to strengthen NATO as a powerful military, political, and global alliance. So, Philippe, please.
And just one remark, Philippe. As we discussed before, you are welcome to Ukraine, to Donbass, and we are waiting you. And well, with this pandemic, we had to postponed here our meeting in Ukraine. So I hope in the nearest future you will be in Ukraine, and we will show you all Ukraine from Donbass to Odessa to Lviv and all what you want.
Thank you very much. And you, Hanna, you get a very nice French accent when you speak French. Is certainly one of the reasons that I am loving with Ukraine. That and also the way you receive me each time. And I have to thanks again Yegor for this invitation. And be sure I will be with you as soon as possible, and to come back in Lviv too, to drink the best coffee of the world, because I remember that in Lviv it was a very famous coffee everywhere, and it missed me. So be sure I will be back. And how you told it before, and before I thank Rasa and Gerry Connolly for they say about this optimism we get from your next decade. I would like to tell to the people who hear us that I've been 5 or 6 times now in Ukraine, and it's different parts in Lviv, in Kyiv, in Odessa, in Donbass, and I have been lucky to be there for your presidential polling and the legislative polling, the parliament polling. So it was a very good experience for me, and talk with a lot of people who were going to the polling station and spend a lot of time to talk with them. And when I hear what I hear with those people, it's the same thing that I hear when I'm working on the NATO Parliamentary with Oksana, with there, and I thank her for this invitation, for this meeting. Thank you very much, Oksana, because between 1917 and 1919-20, we worked together, and it was a very good relation with all of MPs from Ukraine. And during these 3 years, I spent in the NATO, Ukraine-NATO Parliamentary Committee. I found the same work, the same minding in your population when I was for the summer 19 and hearing the people. So it's why I'm very optimistic for your future. I see a population on works. I see a population on progress. And it's why I'm working, and it's why I'm involving in that committee, to hear your parliamentaries, to hear all the progress you do, and to to have circumstances to explain to my people, to my colleagues on Parliament, that we have to help and support this country who is a brother of us, is a European country, is a brother of us. And the peace, I would say the peacekeeping has to be a priority, because you are in the European continent and we want to live in peace everywhere in this continent. So it's why with some of my colleagues, we were 7 or 8 French MP, I don't remember exactly, and we traveled to the Donbass to see the red line, to see how was there, how was the loneliness population was there in this part of the country, and we saw the disaster. Since this time, I tried to know how it's happened in the border. And not far away, last month, we used to reach a ceasefire. But when I see the reality, I see that we still have clashes. We still have bombardments with died soldiers or wounded soldiers. So this is, for me, a very strong preoccupation, because those clashes, those bombardments are happening on the door of the Europe. So it's why I continue for the next 3 years my job in this committee, to hear you, different MPs from Ukraine, to hear all the news you can give us that about the work you do inside the country to reach the levels we expect from you, and to hear you about what's happened with your dangerous neighbor. And also, you know that France, the French president of France, used to talk with the Russian president. But in each time, Ukraine is the first line of the discussion. There is no other way for us. The integrity of your country has to be reached again. No other way. And I am very optimistic too that we succeed in this. We don't want democracy did only 1 foot behind. For us, there is not option. And we want that the democracy, that the freedom border, still on the east of your country. So we are very preoccupied by this. We talk every time with this. I see one by month the French Minister of Foreign Affairs, and all the time we have a discussion about this, and his position is still the same. And it's a wall between what's happened east years on you and what happened with you in Europe. So for the next decade, I'm convicted that you will be very, you will be at the rendezvous with all the transformation of the laws we expect from Ukraine. I have no doubt about this. For the future with NATO and the Europe, your destiny is the same destiny than the NATO or the Europe. We are now with the crisis, the healthy crisis, at the new step for everybody. And we all have to grow up, and we all have to change after this. And I think this way of changing will include all the European countries. And it's why I'm very optimistic about your future and our future, because you will bring many things with you that you will give to the European people. And I expected that very much. I'm sorry for this English, very sorry for you people, you hear me like this.
Philippe, your English is better than my French is, so definitely we have to visit Paris again and
yes.
to improve our language. So, and you know, we love France because Anna Kievska used to be the queen of France. And by the way, last year in small city of Western Ukraine, Lutsk, your ambassador here opened the monument of Anna Kievska on her road to Paris. So I think, yes. And also this is another issue why I'm mentioning this, because you remember that Putin wanted to steal our history, saying that Anna Kievska is a Russian princess, which is just lie. And by the way, 2021 is the year of 300th anniversary when Peter the Great renamed Moscovia into Russia by actually stealing our history. And so now, thanks for believing in Ukraine and Ukraine future. We will do our best, reform-minded people, change-maker generation. And now I'm so happy to give the floor to Oksana Yurynets, the former head of Parliamentary of Ukrainian delegation to NATO PA. And it's, for me, it's like a big privilege to see Oksana and now Yegor showing the institutional, how to say, continuity from women leadership to men's power. But I think it's important to see this harmony when we have a tradition of generations and Verkhovna Rada convocations, 8 and now 9 working together on on achieving one strategic goal. So Oksana, now you are working as a professor at Lviv Polytechnic University, and it's also important to improve public awareness about NATO. And how do you assess the next steps and what is really important after the EOP? And also let me use this momentum to express our gratitude to Madeleine Moon, also former president of Parliamentary Assembly of NATO, and Ruxandra Popa for helping us and supporting during the organizing this event. So Oksana, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Hanna. Dear President of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, Presidents of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, Rasa Jukneviciene, and Mr. Gerry Connolly, dear Philippe, Michel-Kleisbauer, and Yegor. It is my pleasure to convey a greeting for Madeleine Moon, former President of the NATO PA. Once again, thank you, our international partners. You are true friends of Ukraine, who have been to Ukraine, to Kiev, Lviv, and other cities, and the east near the front line of the occupied Donbass. Thank you for contribution to the peace and the security of the region. During the last few years, the proactive position of the NATO PA and its clearly coordinated action have enable this change towards Ukraine's EuroAtlantic integration. Change in the constitution of Ukraine are a movement in this direction. During these 2 years, owing to everyone working together and the unchanging position of all those involved with this process, the program for 5 years was adopted in 2020. For the first time in the history of our state as a clear course toward NATO. This next important step is to review the law of reform of the security service of Ukraine. As the head of the parliamentary delegation of 2018-2019, I thank Yegor Chernev for continuing the clear Euro-Atlantic integration course. This is one important signal for consolidation of partners in mutual cooperation. Today, I am professor in Lviv Polytechnic National University. I talk to students about the importance of EuroAtlantic integration. Young people should not only know about the course incorporated in the constitution, but should also be ready to implement it. I also cooperate with local government of implement of the course. It is important and priority. Ukraine will become a member of NATO because this is the only right way. Thank you very much, my dear friends, and merci beaucoup, Michel. And maybe in the future is a good time for our countries and NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and Ukraine will be a member of NATO. Thank you.
Thank you, Oksana. So let us conclude with the final words of Yegor, who will make a summary of all speakers representing Parliamentary Assembly of NATO, and I hope optimistic vision for 2030 for Ukraine and Georgia.
Well, yes, I think with this support of our great partners like the US, the Great Britain, the Canada, France, we will have, I hope, short way to the membership action plan and then to membership to the NATO. Actually, since 2008, we have done a lot of things according to our annual nation plan, because every year we have this home task agreed with the NATO, and we do a lot on this way. And I think, and actually these tasks, it's a part of the future membership action plan. So from my perspective, we did a lot from the map, and we have some. I have some optimistic view about that between receiving map and receiving membership, we will have not 10 years like some countries in Europe, but shorter period. But before this, of course, we have to receive map, and we will do all the best from our side in all the levels: diplomacy, parliamentary, government level, and the highest level of president, to achieve this goal for, I hope, this year on the Summit NATO 2021.
Thank you, Yegor. And according to NATO, Ukraine is the only non-NATO partner nation to have contributed actively to all NATO-led operations and missions for the past 2 decades. So definitely we could say that NATO will benefit from Ukraine's joining to the alliance, and also Georgia joining to the alliance. This is why today's key question was, what is the strategy for next decade, and how to counter Russian hybrid warfare, and how to think about that democracy in Belarus, in Russian Federation, by making Ukraine and Georgia successful. And Philippe, I see your hand, so you wanted also to add your final words before we move to the next panel. So please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to speak about what Yegor just said. Why? It's very important that you continue the big works you are doing in internal. Why? Because things will change with Joe Biden now. Why? When he's arrived, he just elected, and he found a very old situation. Old, it's 6-year situation on Donbass. And he has to make his mandate a success, he has to change the things. So for me, in the next 1 or 2 years maximum, he will do a move, but a very big foot with what happened on the eastern border of the Europe. More now than Mr. Joseph and the Euro Commission has been, how you say, malmené. I don't know the word in English, but with what happened just now, Mr. Biden has to do a move, and I'm sure he will do it. So in the next 18 or 20 months, there is a big foot, in a big step forward by Joe Biden on this problem.
Thank you, Philippe. And also, as I mentioned at the beginning of our online international forum, of course, we do believe that Joe Biden presidency in the United States and also Mr. Connolly as a president of NATO PA, both of them, together with Ukrainians who are fighting for reforming our country, and also with the support from Canada, UK, European Union, France, Germany, we will make this breakthrough, and within next years, Ukraine and Georgia will receive membership action plan, because we are defending European continent from Russian aggression. Ukraine became a contributor of European security, and of course we would like to strengthen NATO as a strong military, political and security alliance. So this is our homework, this is our geopolitical goal incorporated into constitution, and this is also our civilizational choice when Ukrainian citizens during Euromaidan in 2014 did. So our fight continues, and thanks Yegor, thanks Oksana, thanks Philippe, merci, and also thanks to Mr. Connolly and Rasa for this first panel discussion. And now the next panel is way forward with the state security service reform. The panel will be dedicated to the achievements and challenges of building transparency and accountability in Ukraine's defense and security sector. So what are the key issues which need to be addressed? How to ensure that state security service reform is focused exclusively on its core activities, and also how to depoliticize the service. So, and the speakers of next panel is Mariana Bezugla, member of Ukrainian Parliament, head of the working group on the SBU draft law, state security service. Also, let me also express our gratitude for Alexander Vinnikov, who is today with us, and also Antti Juhani Hartikanainen, and of course Vitaly Shabunin, who is representing the Anti-Corruption Action Center. So I think it's really important to mention that on January 28, Ukrainian Parliament did an important step towards making this goal come true. Specifically started a reform of the country's counterintelligence service, the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU. The Rada has adopted the draft law on the SBU, but it needs amending before the second reading to ensure it fully corresponds with the best EuroAtlantic standards. And for those who doesn't know, Mariana Bezugla is a true champion who was fighting in the session hall in the parliament to make this draft law adoption in the first reading. And Mariana, Oksana, could you please tell us more about, as the head of the working group, about the preparation for the second reading, and what kind of support from civil society, from international partners you need that this law is adopted in the second reading and it meets international standards, and of course also defend our national interests. So thank you, because I remember my convocation in 2018 when we were adopting the law on national security. Unfortunately, the amendments on state security service reform wasn't approved by the parliament because a big sabotage, a big counter actions from different people. So you are our hero, but still, how could we help that in the second reading we received a truly reformatic law on state security service reform? So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you much for good words, and it's great pleasure that we have such event, and also it's a great pleasure that there is some continuity of advocating and discussing the process. Speaking about what help do we need, actually it's like a common work, and I will divide it into components. First, of course, it's to work to make the final project as best as possible, realistic, and according to common sense and common practices, to make this Ukrainian security service reliable, from one side, reliable partner, from other side is just like not the side, but in the complex to make it have full with capacity to fight against different threats and to work with the challenges our country has. And the second component, what we need to do now, it's to be sure to make the circumstances and the process in that way to make it irreversible. Actually, of course, that what has happened, it made a lot to make it irreversible, because taken just like to go forward, because when we are speaking about the history of transformation of security service, actually transformation, because we did not have reform of this body. It is the history of almost 30 years, and many people, many experts even know about that officially the reform is about 15 years. And some kind of intensive discussions took place for several years, and such continuity of discussion without some concrete steps, it's a history of this reform. Now we have the first stage passed. It's the Parliament supported the draft in the first reading. It means that Parliament supported the concept, the overall structure of transformation, the main ideas, and also I need to emphasize that actually it's not just like new draft of SSU law. It's like a package, massive, of regulations on the level of law, and also some instructions concerning the under-law acts, which is about to regulate all the field, all the branch of how security service should exist and how it works, and how what is the interaction between other bodies and points in the security and defense sector. So actually it's the package of changes in about 40 different laws, and also additional instructions on for other law acts. Frankly, I can speak about it for ages, so I just kindly ask moderators to stop me, and if you have additional questions, I will be happy to answer. About the work between readings, of course, it is not some kind of 1 week or 2 weeks. It's obviously we are expecting at least 2 months of intensive work. Now, just now, the 11th of February is the last call to get additional proposals from offices of members of parliaments from the whole parliament, from different committees, and then we need about 2 weeks to aggregate all the amendments to work with them. Are they according to the overall concept or not, and so on, and then to work in the working group, also taking into account that when the project of the law was registered, we sent the request to get expertise on this registered draft to different bodies. It's administration, it's just like ministries, National Security Council, etc. It's also different non-governmental organizations, and also it's our dear partners, our consulting group to make the consultation, our international consulting group, may say in this way. And of course, we are thankful that, frankly, we got about 300 pages of expertise and need to work on it. What about, maybe I will talk a little bit about those resistance we have while pushing the law in the parliament. It was just like a rather dramatic story. As example, the representatives from security service, I will not talk about some kind of certain individuals, personalities, or leadership of security service, because it's like to deal with the system which was not transformed in any way during the years. And of course, we had some transformation also taking into account the aggression of the Russian Federation and good points in effectiveness of security service, but the whole system is still was still stable in an untransformed way. Representatives of security service and different connected persons and groups connected with the members of parliament asked them not to vote, asked not to support this idea, and so on. We had it permanently before the first reading, and frankly, even the procedure of voting for the first reading was something like a special operation in the parliament, because all that when security service may say like saw it in the list of to be voted today, the wave of reaction and challenges became even stronger. So we had to play in some way with the list of of the order of the laws to be voted to calm down such reaction, and also connection with our members of parliament. But it's not just like something new. It's like a resistance of the system of transformation, and it's obvious to say that we need this transformation, need for our Ukrainian security and also for our Euro-Atlantic integration, and as I previously said, to be the reliable partner and to go forward.
Thank you.
So it's just like a broad picture. if you have questions, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mariana. I'm sure that there will be some questions, and we have online translation, so people, we already received questions. Is it possible for Ukraine, together with Georgia, to receive membership action plan this year? So maybe we will move with this question to Alexander Vinnikov and ask, what if Ukrainian parliament, for example, in April or May, adopt state security service reform in the second reading, and it will meet the NATO standards? So my questions, Alexander, to you, what are the most important aspects of SBU reform for the Ukraine-NATO integration? Which NATO standards should still be implemented during the reform, and what improvements are expected within the draft law before the second reading? And I remember how proactively you personally and also your team from NATO Representations Office to Ukraine used to work in the 8th convocation, and now I know also about your contribution. So Alexander, you already heard Mariana's updates, so could you please respond to but Mariana, please, we are really supporting you, and we hope with having such good partners like NATO office in Ukraine, so we will do our best to see the law adopted in second reading. So Alexander, so please could you respond on 3 questions to you?
Thank you very much, dear Hanna and dear Mariana. It's great to see all of you. Thank you for this invitation. I think the idea of having this event is an extremely timely one, and we're happy to join. Particularly happy to see civil society being so actively involved in following developments that are related to your country's EuroAtlantic aspirations. The topic of discussion today, the reform of the security service, clearly is of interest to us. We have been, as the Alliance, supporting the reform process for quite a long time. We believe that a modern and efficient security service that is in line with EuroAtlantic principles and best practices will benefit all Ukrainians. And therefore, we welcome a wide discussion and debate on this issue that includes all the key stakeholders, including civil society, of course. So I'm pleased to share a few thoughts about this historic reform process on behalf of the Alliance. And in my brief remarks, I will focus on 2 aspects. First, what we see as achievements, and secondly, where we see challenges and opportunities. And I think, Hanna, this goes some way to replying to those questions. Now, reform of the SBU clearly, as you mentioned, remains a key aspect of Ukraine's European and Euro-Atlantic integration efforts. And NATO therefore welcomed the approval of the corresponding draft law in first reading, and we see it as a significant development. I would like to commend the efforts of the Verkhovna Rada as a whole, and of course other stakeholders as well, with whom we have built an excellent relationship over the past few years. And I will join Hanna in complimenting also Mariana's personal leadership as part of the National Security, Defense and Intelligence Committee, which really was the driver of this process and continues to be the driver. We were very pleased to see that this draft law was supported in first reading by several factions, including by members of the opposition. I think it's an important signal that indicates that this topic is clearly seen as an issue of national importance, and this is valid across the political spectrum. We have also noted President Zelensky's recent public statements in support of SBU reform. And I think that all of this shows widespread political consensus today in Ukraine that the service needs to be reformed in order to focus better on its core tasks, which are defined in Ukraine's law on national security. And those are counterintelligence, counterterrorism, and the protection of state secrets. Now, as we all know, this reform is and will be a very long and challenging process. But of course, a long journey starts with the first step. And we believe that the draft law adopted in first reading is an important step on Ukraine's EuroAtlantic path. And jointly with our long-standing partners from the International Advisory Group, the EU and the US, NATO stands ready to further support Ukraine on this path. We commit to standing with Ukraine through the development and the adoption and implementation of this important piece of legislation. And so Ukraine can rest assured that it will not be alone in this process. Now, turning to some of the challenges that are still outstanding and which also offer opportunities, I'd like to first of all highlight that the international partners cannot provide Ukraine with a off-the-shelf template or an ideal standard model of how an internal security service should be organized. This is something that each nation must decide for itself, freely and independently, taking into account the realities that the country is facing. What we as NATO can do, however, is to analyze proposed solutions and assess to what extent they are in line with EuroAtlantic principles and best practices. And in this regard, our advice and recommendations consist of preserving and protecting some provisions of the draft law as it develops further. Now, these include the very important phasing out of pretrial investigative powers, the downsizing and transforming of the service into a civilian entity, and streamlining the service's role and responsibility regarding combating organized crime. At the same time, in our view, additional work is required to further refine terminology and clarify some provisions on judicial and financial control in particular. Well, we also think that some elements of the law could be further improved to reflect democratic standards regarding human rights and fundamental freedoms. Another key aspect of the law will be effective parliamentary oversight. And I think this is one of the really crucial elements that will help Ukraine become, further down the line, become a member of the EuroAtlantic and European family of nations. So the work, as Marianna highlighted, continues. And as I said, we stand ready to provide further support. We recognize that there will be probably quite a number of amendments to the draft as the Parliament prepares for the second reading, and we are open to engage with Ukrainian parliamentarians as appropriate to support their work. Of course, once the law is approved, hopefully in the near future, the very difficult task of implementation will begin. And this will require continued focus, strategic thinking, and of course, resources. This is where we will also be very supportive, and I think we will take a hard look at what additional support we can offer Ukraine as it starts the implementation phase. My final point will just be a point about strategic communications, and clearly reforms of this magnitude and of historic importance require the full support of the citizens of a country. And that's why these reforms need to be transparent and well communicated. And I think that events such as this event today contribute significantly to this process.
Thank you, Alexander.
I will conclude here, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Alexander. You're staying with us, and we do believe that all our efforts, now preparation for the second reading, so will bring the positive results and will make Ukraine closer to membership action plan with the adoption of state security service reform. So, and I also would like to express our gratitude to the European Union advisory mission in Ukraine, and would like to give a floor to Yukneviciene Hartikainen. I hope I spell correct. I'm sorry, Mr. Yohani. So, could you please reflect EU's vision of the reform and how your mission assists Ukraine to make it possible also, and what are the most important aspects of the SBU reform for the Ukraine-EU cooperation, also taking into account the visit of the Prime Minister of Ukraine to Brussels, and also in the Constitution we incorporated both our strategic goal to become member of the EU and NATO. So please, Mr. Yukneviciene Hartikainen, so what are the European standards for the security service to be implemented under the reform?
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon for all of you. Of course, like you most likely have already recognized that we have been working very closely together with the NATO representation in Ukraine, with the EU delegation and then US Embassy in the format of this international advisory group. And for this reason, I think that you are not surprised that my comments are very similar than those of Alexander's comments, what he just presented before me. Of course, we also welcome very much this approval of this draft law of the security service of Ukraine in this repeated first reading. And we consider it as a very positive step toward the reform of this service. Of course, we all know that, like also Marina very well explained, that there's a lot of work ahead before this second reading. And we tried and we would like to bring it closer to these EuroAtlantic principles and best practices. I think that the key message for the society is that this reform is about ensuring that this service is better equipped and better connected with its Western partners to protect the security of Ukraine and its citizens. That we would like to make it higher quality service and not to weaken that service, because it has been meanwhile in public said that it would be like a weakening of this service when we go for this reform, but it's vice versa. We want to make it stronger. Then, okay, that Alexander already mentioned that this current draft law enshrines these key reform steps. That okay, that first of all, this phasing out this pre-trial investigative authority. Okay, there is this transition period till 2024, and then of course these tasks should be then transferred to the other agencies. That would be of course a big challenge, but we are also ready to support in this process, and also to set up this Bureau of Economic Security. Then this downsizing and demilitarization, they are of course big efforts and surely politically very challenging in this situation. We understand this. Then it's very important to focus this abolishment of this Directorate K, and then also redistribute its functions. And then when like also Alexander mentioned these let's say concerns what we have, then we have also some concerns regarding this security service, like excessive powers introduced in this draft law, and we consider that they could potentially infringe on human rights and fundamental freedoms. And just to mention few of these issues, like for example, this automatic access to databases or possibility to block websites and revocation of broadcasting licenses and so on. And then, okay, there's also this access to public and private premises without, even without court order and so on. Then it was also mentioned by Alexander that they need to little bit work further on some definitions of key terms or terminology in this draft law. For example, we should know exactly what does it mean, these national terms, national security, and we should not also strengthen these security service law enforcement functions and mandate beyond what has been envisaged earlier. Then we also see that this judicial and financial control, there is some room for development. It should be defined more robustly. And then, of course, we have also some concerns related to their powers to use force, secondment of the security service staff to public and private institutions, and then also lack of clarity in role of security service in classified information. And then we have this also extremely important topic is this parliamentary oversight, and of course we see that absolutely Verkhovna Rada should set up this stand-alone committee with oversight powers over security and intelligence agencies, as it has been foreseen within this adopted law on intelligence. Because we think that without this proper oversight, this security service reform will be incomplete. Then, of course, okay, we have a lot work ahead, and then when this law, let's hope that it will happen now this spring when it will be adopted and signed, then this implementation will be a key aspect. And of course, we can discuss this later on. But what I can ensure at the moment is that our mission, we stand ready to support this process once it begins. And of course, now we are very interested to support Mariana and her team in finalizing this draft law and preparing it for the second reading. Then I'm not exactly aware of what kind of discussions they are actually having today in Brussels when they have this association council there ongoing. But I have seen some like talking points from the EU side, and I know that the security service draft law issue and this reform issue will be raised there, and Ukrainian Prime Minister and this Ukrainian delegation will be encouraged to go ahead with this reform. Thank you very much.
Thank you also so much. I think now it's important to give the floor to Vitaly Shabunin, who represents the Anti-Corruption Action Center. This is the organization which is one of the key drivers among civil society advocating the state security service reform, knowing that with the state security service reform, we could see more trust to Ukraine and also more investment, because there were a lot of cases when SBU just mixed its function and was attacking the business, which was not good for the Ukraine's reputation. So, Vitaly, how to fully deprive the SBU of the investigative function, and how to ensure absence of political, criminal interference in the work of the state security service, because We also have seen a lot of positive examples when officers of SBU, especially encountering state betrayal or separatist move in the eastern Ukraine, in the Russian hybrid warfare. So, but unfortunately, without this reform, so what is the plan of your organization or the coalition of NGOs to support people like Mariana in the parliament to see that this law finally in the 30 years of renewed independence will be adopted, and this will be our, how to say, achievement for the 30 years of renewed independence, and also our important step to receive the membership action plan. So please, the floor is yours, Vitaly.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'm not sure that our public support will help Mariana in the parliament. I think it was better. But frankly speaking, I would like to give great thanks for Mariana. You are a very brave woman, and frankly speaking, you picked up the fight many others don't even want to think about, especially in the previous parliament. And it was really courageous, and from ANTAC and other NGOs, we will do all possible for you to succeed in this fight, because it's first of all your fight. I mean, in the understanding of who is leading the fight. We will just help you there. And frankly speaking, for colleagues from international side, I'm really sorry that we still need to speak about the reform. It should be done at least 4 years before. But it is as it is. I'm not sure we should speak here in details about the reform, because we all stand on a common ground. And it is very easy to get the results Anna you want to have. We just need to push the bill in a second reading. So easy, just push it to the second reading. I'm joking here. As you know, ANTAC's role is to advocate the reforms, and I think there is no place in this discussion to advocate, and there is no need to advocate the reform. We all stand on the same ground. If you are not against it, I just will switch to Ukraine to speak for those who are listening to the discussion from the Ukrainian side, just to send them a few messages, which I hope will give them more understanding of the situation we stand now. So I will use Ukraine.
Vitaly, just a second. So for those who are watching in English, you should take another link with translation into Ukrainian. Especially, we still have Philippe from France, member of French delegation to Parliamentary Assembly of NATO, and our speakers from NATO representation office and European Union advisory mission in Ukraine. So, because Vitaly now moved to Ukrainian language.
I just want those from Ukraine will hear my message as clear as possible and will understand them as clear as possible.
I would like to thank Mariana, who experienced a huge pressure. Especially, I would like to thank to her on behalf of the leadership of the security service of Ukraine, and I would like to say my message to the leadership of the security service in Ukraine. You did naughty things during this campaign. We can have different views on the reform, but the ways how you presented your opinion is very bad. Especially, I mean, the black information campaign against those who think differently from you. I would like to remind to the leadership of the security service that he is appointed by the Parliament of Ukraine. And he has to report to the Parliament. He is accountable to the Parliament. The same I would like to say to Mariana. Those groups in SBU who counteracted to reform, these are not the entire SBU. But those people who did that, these are the worst part of staff in SBU. But in SBU we have many diligent people, many diligent officers who are from counterintelligence, counter-terrorist department. They are extreme supporters of all your efforts and wish you all the best. I would like to say to those groups in the SBU who try to counteract reform, I believe that a geopolitical choice of President Zelensky is quite clear and it allows no options to you. And his position and the position of our international partners is also quite clear as to the reform of the security service of Ukraine. This means that Mariana's effort and those who support this reform, they inevitably be successful, while those who try to prevent this reform from implementation, they simply will lose. And I wish you to apply common sense and to be guided with your strive to survive. And I encourage you to become a part of this reform instead of making opposition to it. Because this is the healthy logic to act like this. And this will allow you to achieve some positive result, while your attacks on Mariana and her team would bring you to very grave results.
If you will have any other questions, I will be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Vitaly. I think after your speech in Ukrainian language, so let me translate diplomatically. So you are warning those who are against the state security service reform, who works at the SBU, not to block the reform and not to attack people like Mariana, reform-minded. And I agree with Alexander Vinnikov that it's really important that during the second reading, Ukrainian Parliament, the session hall, will be united both from mono-majority MPs to democratic opposition, political parties, European Solidarity, also Golos, because I think that state security service reform is about the future of Ukraine. It's about the membership action plan. It's about the investment opportunities. So definitely we would like to see that leaders of democratic opposition will join to the working group, will be very helpful to Mariana, providing her with comments, but not to how to say, submit as many as possible amendments, and to see these amendments spam, which will not allow to speed up the process of consideration. So Mariana, could you please tell us about some probably obstacles or your vision? Of course, maybe it's not the right question when, it could happen. But I agree with Alexander that our president, Mr. Zelensky, with sanctions through the National Security and Defense Council, not to allow Russian propaganda to discredit Ukrainian reforms, and it was very right decision of a National Council of Security and Defense, and also his statements supporting this reform. So how do you see the chances to adopt, and when do you see it's possible to adopt, and what are the obstacles and how to help you, please?
Yes, actually, by the way, our committee fully supported the decision of the president concerning sanctions. It was during the last meeting of the committee. Different comments were here, and firstly, I just need to thank you. Thank you all the partners, NATO mission, European Union representation, for the support, for the best practices and sharing of the competence while working on the draft. We will request additional expert opinion while preparing for the final for the second reading, and it will be soon. So just I hope we will interact in this model to get the best final variant as possible in these circumstances, in this state, and just to get the best as we can together. Also, speaking about commentary from Vitaly, thank you for the support. Just do not do it very publicly, yes, because we have rather complicated environment even in the parliament. But we need to state, of course, that such transformation as security service transformation need to unite the members of parliament from different fractions, because it's transformation for years, and it's transformation which influence state security, state condition dramatically. So I hope that such value of and such support level will be for also during the second reading, I hope. But firstly, of course, we need at least the result, the passing of the second reading. And it's not just like it's not light process. We still have a lot of challenges, and of course still have resistance in the system. They just are changing now some tactics. I hope also, just additional hope, that our interaction will be in more and more constructive way. But you see, what the observation is that there are a lot of good specialists and even some loyalty from the leadership of security service to work on some points of the law. But from other side, we have some kind of deep state of security service, which is about the resistance. And the other part of deep state is also many different specialists and even departments which understand the request of changes and wants to have the proper capacity to be the capable counterintelligence, etc. So it's a process, it's a life, it's a process of transformation. We need to go this way. And speaking about the timeline, as I previously said, it's about, so spring is for security service, transformation law. We need about 2 months of a big tempo to make the draft of the final draft. and then to make all the bureaucratic procedures. And then the next stage of tempo, may I say in this way, the next stage depends on all the political conglomerate and political will and work with fractions and risks, etc., etc., etc. So the goal is to finish spring with the new security service law and then to get the sign from the president. And also this goal wise in this timeline that it's about the budget. Nothing can happen without resources. So we need to plan the budget for 2022, and this is planning is it starts actually now, but the just like main stage it's summer and autumn to get the proper budget for the new for the relaunching of security service, and in that case 2022, 2023, and 2024. They will be the years of transformation, because actually the concept is to make more during the 3 years, and then to just to finish for some aspects for during next years.
Thank you, Mariana. So it seems like a good plan. So I think before the celebration of the regaining 30 years of independence, we definitely, I hope I'm belonging to the optimist, and now it seems like the coalition of supporters formed. And in this coalition we have MPs both from ruling mono-majority and democratic opposition, civil society, our international partners, and of course officers in the state security service reforms, because there are a big part of officers who really not corrupt, they are true patriots, and they are on our side. And I think it's really important in 2020 during the Parliamentary Assembly of NATO in Kiev to deliver the package of comprehensive reform package. And Alex Vinnikov knows better about this package and what is achievable. Yes, please, Mariana.
Yes, I'm very sorry, just a small remark. There was some joke about non-governmental organization, but I need just 2 moments. It's quite obvious even in such a young state, without some pressure, some proactive position from non-governmental organization, radical changes. I will not even call them radical, but real changes of the blocks of how the state is functioning, they are impossible. So actually, in taking into account these opportunities and this point, even before even between the first and second reading, we still are working in the way of working group with not only members of parliament, but also those stakeholders that I named firstly. It's also different ministries and non-governmental organizations, because actually law is an open process, it's not secret, and all the amendments will be worked also in the group. So it's an opportunity for everybody within the common sense to join to finalize the project. So it's just a remark I wanted to say. And and also the next very important moment, and it was articulated now, we now, and we're thankfully to this, we have the political will of the president. And frankly, it was also some kind of way for him, not just, I will not say to understand the need, but to see the overall picture of the problem, and also that this way should be happen. And thank you, Mr. President, for this, that we have this political will now. Something like that.
Thank you, Mariana. Definitely having political will on behalf of President, also support in the Parliament from key political factions, because you need 226 minimum votes, and also equipped with the support expertise from our international partners, good, patriotic, professional officers or experts from state security service and from civil society organizations. So I think you have a dream team to prepare for the second reading, and I do believe that since today our ANTS Network and Anti-Corruption Action Center, we started a series of discussion, Ukraine-NATO Vision 2030, and we will continue this public discussion and also working group meetings. And also, since we rescheduled our Zero Corruption Conference, Democracy in Action Conference from last year to this year, and I hope within next 2 days, we will finalize the date, and also working with Alexander Vinnikov with US Embassy and our key strategic partners, we will also have a separate panel discussing Ukraine moving to membership action plan and what is needed, like institutional reforms. So Alexander, at the end of our discussion, now are you more optimistic and or you see more work have to do? And by the way, thanks for promising that NATO will provide more support after the adoption of the law on implementation, which is also enforcement is very important. So please, the final remarks, and we will finish today's our international high-level discussion.
Thank you, Hanna. Well, if I weren't an optimist, I would be in the wrong business. So I remain optimistic about Ukraine's future, definitely. I can tell you, I've been here quite a long time, and I know that reform of the SBU has been one of the most difficult and most sensitive areas of reform that we have been communicating with our Ukrainian partners about. So I fully understand how complex it is to transform and modernize the service in line with European and EuroAtlantic practices. At the same time, as was voiced by many colleagues here today, this is clearly an important next step on Ukraine's EuroAtlantic and European path. And it's, I think, very clear that NATO and the other strategic partners of Ukraine are committed to standing by Ukraine and helping Ukraine every step of the way as it moves from development, planning to implementation of this historic reform process. And I would also like to second those comments about the reform-minded colleagues in the security service and in other security and defense organizations. I think in my years here, I've worked with many stakeholders who are extremely patriotic and extremely committed to seeing Ukraine become part of the European and EuroAtlantic family of nations. So I cannot emphasize the historic importance of this process enough, and I think it will clearly stand Ukraine in good stead as it continues on its EuroAtlantic trajectory.
Thank you, Alexander, and also Mr. Yugkneviciene. Would you add something as a final remarks?
Yeah, thank you very much. And actually, I mentioned during my speech that we are going to strengthen actually our support for the security service reform. We have now already ongoing one recruitment. We are recruiting one short-term expert to support this reform. And now, when our new mandate will start as of 1st June, just before this security service law will be adopted, let's hope so. Then we are going to, in the new mandate, we are going to strengthen our support for this reform. And now this short-term expert is to be deployed to the to plan and propose that how we could support this reform and make some kind of plan, and then we would go ahead with the implementation as of next summer. Thank you.
Thank you to all speakers. So our higher level international discussion, Ukraine-NATO Vision 2030, and also expert debates, way forward with the state security service reform, is finished for today. So let me express our gratitude, especially to Mariana for her brevity, and also to many thanks to Alexander and Mr. Antti Juhani Hartikainen. I think if I repeat 3 times more, I will finally pronounce it in the right way. So, and Vitaly Shabunin, and also our speakers from the first panel, especially the President of Parliamentary Assembly of NATO, Mr. Connolly, and also a member of European Parliament, Rasa Jukneviciene, and also our representative of French Parliament, Mr. Philippe, and Oksana Yurynets. So I think it's really important to work hard and to see results. And results will be a first membership action plan. In the nearest 1-2 years, we do believe, and we will fight for this. And within a decade, I hope Ukraine and Georgia will join to NATO, to the alliance, as it's written in our constitution. And NATO will become even stronger, having such strong members as Ukraine is, with unique experience of our soldiers fighting military aggression, and also having Georgia on board. So thanks everybody, and thanks Anti-Corruption Action Center and people from the Secretariat of Parliamentary Assembly of NATO, and the previous chair, Mr. Madeleine Moon, also for helping us. Thanks everybody, and see you during our next discussion. And Mariana, please be strong. Now you have more good people with you, and we hope we will celebrate our 30th anniversary of renewed independence, having very modern, very good professional state security service law. Thanks everybody for this discussion today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.